Everyone, I'm Tammy Leslie, the president of the Ladysmith Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to welcome you all and thank you for joining us for the Ladysmith Chamber of Commerce virtual presentation of the 2020 Provincial All Candidates Forum. Our event is the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are on the traditional and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples and the traditional territory of the Stamatis First Nation. So the purpose of the All Candidates Forum is for the audience members to gather the information they need to make an informed decision on election day. We've had to do things a little different this year, and that is why we're coming to you virtually for the first time instead of live from Aggie Hall as we normally do. We also had to pull this together a little more quickly than usual due to the short notice of the election, and we hope that you find this conversation engaging, informative, and most of all helpful in your decision making. I'd like to welcome and thank each of our candidates for taking the time in the last week of the election to attend our virtual forum and provide their input in this process. Jenna Forster of Jenna Forster and Associates will once again be our moderator. Jenna provides executive coaching and consulting services in her office in Ladysmith. Jenna has been our moderator for all of our All Candidates forums since about 2014, which makes this her 7th or 8th forum, so we are in very good hands. Thank you, Jenna. With that, I'd like to wish each candidate luck into this forum, and I'm going to turn things over to Jenna to take it from here.
Thanks, Tammy. Welcome, candidates. Welcome, everyone. So for the audience, I'm just going to run through how this forum is going to run so everybody knows what this is going to look like, and then we'll jump right into opening remarks. So the purpose of this forum, there will be 4 components to the forum. First, we'll begin with opening remarks. So each candidate will be given 5 minutes to provide opening comments. Rebuttals will not be allowed during this time. Then we'll move into the pre-selected questions. Candidates were given 3 pre-selected questions prior to today's forum. The candidate will be given 2 minutes for each of them to respond to each question. Rebuttals are allowed during this time. Candidates, please raise your hand if you wish to have a rebuttal, and I will note you. Each candidate has 3 rebuttals that they may use at any time during the forum outside of opening and closing remarks. Random questions. A series of questions will be posed to the candidates. These questions have not been provided in advance and have been prepared by forum sponsors and through community consultation. Again, the candidates will be given 2 minutes each to respond to each question. Rebuttals are allowed during this portion of the forum. Then we'll move into closing remarks. Each candidate will be given 5 minutes to provide a closing statement with no rebuttals. All right, without further ado, let's move into the opening remarks, and we will begin with Doug Patterson.
Good morning or good evening, everybody. I wish to thank you all for taking the time to view this. Later on, I wish to thank the Chamber and the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board and Jenna for making this opportunity available to us. And I also wish to thank Doug and Chris for also being a part of it. And I want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Stamatis First Nation, as well as Nanaimo and neighboring First Nation community. Tracy and I, as of last Thursday, celebrated our 49th wedding anniversary. We have 3 married daughters and 6 grandchildren and a great grandchild that will be coming early in the new year. We have lived in Ladysmith since 1975, coming from Port Alberni. I am 68 years old and have almost that many years of history on Vancouver Island. I have over 30 years experience as a town councillor for the town of Ladysmith, which has given me an opportunity to listen to people's concerns and also being a part of helping to solve issues and make things better for as many people as possible. I'm also very proud of over 50 years of community service, both here and in the Alberni Valley. People really matter to me. I believe that we're not here long enough to be able to not work with people and to be able to make people smile. As I stated, we have 6 grandchildren, and I am really, really concerned about what the future holds for them. Right now, although it was done properly at the start, we are finding ourselves going deeper and deeper into the hole. There is no plan by the other parties to get out of that hole yet. And we need strong fiscal economically minded and environmentally minded government that will work with all the people of BC, all the small business, all the large industry, the unions, to make BC prosper again. We have a vast array of natural resources as well as human resources, and we need to work together on those to generate new sources of revenue. So I love people, I love where we live, and I am dedicated to making it work for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, opening remarks, move to Doug Routley.
Excuse me. Thank you, Jenna. Thank you to the Chamber. Thank you to the Real Estate Board. Both my father-in-law and my brother-in-law happen to be past presidents of VIREP. And they do a lot of really great work in our communities, particularly around flood mitigation and other community focused interactions with government. They've done a very good job over the years. Of course, I'd like to recognize that we are on the traditional territories of Coast Salish, Hulkamingan speaking peoples, the Salinas, the Snuneymuxw, and other nations in the region. And I'd just like to start by saying that 1 year ago, it's 10 months ago now, we first heard the word coronavirus. And then about 8 months ago, our lives all changed. And our institutions and government and communities have been shaken to their foundations. And so what we face now is a drastically different landscape than we faced the last time we met to decide who would represent the community. And what I'd like to say is that I was very proud of the work we had done. We promised you last election that we would make life more affordable, that we would increase services, that we would bring benefit to families, working families, and we did, but that also positioned us to be in the best position to weather this pandemic and to come out of it. We are going to make huge investments, and we have a very well-described plan to get us out of this. And it starts with a 1% commitment of GDP, that's $3 billion each year for 3 years, on top of $23 billion of already planned infrastructure spending. That will generate employment, 1,000 jobs per year, and it will continue our commitment to increase services to people like you and your families. I want to speak to people because I know we're all worried about what's coming next, but this province is recovering very quickly. We have gotten to this place where we are now because we all pulled together. And that's what we're asking you to support us in doing, to continue that project. Because it's only when we do bring people together and work together on these issues that we find ourselves where we want to be. Well, I'll talk about the record of the previous government, their huge tax break on the first day in government that we're still paying for today with reduced services, reduced quality of care for seniors, reduced standards in our schools. All of these things we've been fighting to repair. And it is definitely a huge task to do that. Housing affordability went through the roof. There were no steps taken. We've built more housing, completed more housing in 3 years than the BC Liberals did in 16 and a half years. So we feel very proud of that. We know that we can do a lot more. I feel as though the job of an MLA is to essentially bend public policy to fit the community and not the other way around. It is a job that requires that we devote ourselves to positioning other people for success. It really is the job of a facilitator. And I think I've been able to do that. We've brought a lot of investment, 72 childcare spaces to Ladysmith, 150,000 for the Stocking Dam study, 150,000 housing needs study, poverty reduction plan. We're expanding a lot of things that will affect Ladysmith as transit develops in the area. 12-year-olds will be riding transit for free to help families get around. So we're determined to reflect your values. We're determined to manage this crisis as best we can. We know how to govern, and we've been managing this crisis in the way that the public health scientists recommend it at every step. And we'll continue to make that commitment to you, that it will be that kind of approach. And finally, we need all to pull on the rope together to make it through this in the best way we can. And I think BC has been doing a great job. You and your families have been doing a great job in keeping us with the flattest curve possible with this virus. We want to continue this project. We are very well prepared for this challenge. And I thank you very much for your support over the years. It's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Opening remarks, Chris Istash.
Thanks, Swale. Thank you very much for having us here, Tammy, Jenna, Mark, and the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board. I'm today speaking from the land of the Hul'qumi'num speaking Coast Salish peoples, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with everybody today. First, I just want to, before I go into talking here, just want to acknowledge Duck and Doug. You know, this has been quite the run here, and this is the last time we're going to be, I believe, talking and listening to each other. And I want to acknowledge what we're all probably going through and the stresses of an election and everything we're feeling. So Duck and Don, thank you for coming forward and doing this with us, and both of your dedications to your community. So, you know, thank you to that. I just want to put that there. You know, I know we're all doing the best we can for our community. So thank you to you guys. For myself, my background, like so many of us, we didn't realize the urgency of the environment and having it front and center in our lives. So for myself, I worked 20 years in the oil and gas industry. I worked with my hands. I provided for my family and their livelihood, and hard work in the resource industry, and knowing you know, how important we need to take care of our resource industries as we move forward. Over that time, I was spent in operational management, and as well managing several $1 million in technical sales a year. So a lot of fiscal responsibility during my time. At that same time, I felt a responsibility to my local community, and I served as a city councillor and had the responsibility of being a listener and an advocate for the community, and working on their behalf for a more connected community. Over that time, then I had eventually moved to Vancouver Island. I'd fallen in love with the beautiful outdoor communities here and was drawn to the natural world, and you know, just have fallen in love with the entire region. And as my love for this region and the environment grew and my awareness grew, I felt no longer connected, that I was aligned, that where I was at in my job, we couldn't make the changes we needed to make for the climate. So I moved on to really focus on local small business in my community. And in the last 6 years, have been a small business owner and been an advocate for our community, along with being that business owner, as president of the Business Association, and really understanding and feeling what everybody's going through as small business owners. And as well with that, of being connected to the outdoors, I've been working in advocacy work with Federation of Mountain Clubs of BC on Right to Roam work, and then the Couch and Trail Stewards, connecting youth and families and people everywhere with trails for hiking and biking. That's throughout the entire Cowichan Valley. It's been a real passion. And that passion continues, is why I'm running to be your Green MLA. It seems like the other parties are out of ideas, and I think the Green Party has definitely the prominent idea is we need to put the environment first and center. You know, in this election, we need to stop investing in the fossil fuel industries and dying industries. The other parties believe that we need to keep going forward on Site C. They believe we need to keep going forward on old growth forests. There's talks of cutting PST and talks of giving out $1,000 checks to everybody. But really what we need to be focusing on is the climate and not jeopardizing the future of our kids. My wife and we have our 2 young children, and I'm doing this for them. I know the Greens aren't going to form government, but what we want to do is have that balance of responsibility. As Doug said, the NDP has done really good work, but that's because the Greens were there working alongside them and making sure that that balance of responsibility came forward and BC was looked after. We didn't want the election, and we gave our confidence to Sonia to Premier Horgan, saying we were there and we had the stability until the election was going to be next year, and we were going to see it through. We need a government that is accountable. We don't need a majority. So that's why the Greens are really pushing hard. I'm not a career politician. I'm not running to fill a seat. I'm running to listen, to be seen, to be heard, and to be accessible to everybody. I'm running to make BC a better place. I'm running so that you vote Green.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, we will be moving into the pre-selected portion of this forum. So one of the pre-selected questions that came, let me get my spectacles on so I can read it. What plan does your party have to recover from the economic devastation and deficit spending caused by the COVID-19 pandemic? And we will begin with Doug Routley, NDP. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Certainly, there are huge concerns, and this is why we need a mandate at this time to deal with this problem directly. Obviously, BC is spending into a deficit, as every other jurisdiction is, but we are the best positioned jurisdiction to do that, and we will have one of the smallest deficits according to the size of our economy in Canada through this period. But one of the most important things is that we didn't actually shut down the economy. It never went below about 45–50% activity levels. And now we've recovered to almost 90% of previous levels already. So the economy is recovering because people need it to. They go out and they make it. But we have to do it safely. And so the plan that we have not only is safe in terms of public health, but we have to do it in a way that leverages the actions and role and investment of government as much as possible. So wherever we're doing projects with the recovery fund that invest in infrastructure, we will be using displaced workers who have been displaced by COVID. We are retraining them, particularly for the 7,000 workers that we've committed to hire into long-term care. This is partly to cover the costs and extra workers needed for the single site initiative. The single site initiative is necessary because bills 19 and 29 had to be repealed. They were Liberal bills that led to 10,000 people being fired from seniors care, mostly women, the largest mass firing of women in Canadian history. So these are costly changes, but they're good for this province, and we need your support and a mandate to be able to take these necessary steps in the best way possible.
Thank you, Doug. We have our first rebuttal on the floor. Doug Patterson, Liberal Party.
Thank you, Jenna.
Yeah.
Doug talked about displaced workers and putting them back to work on other projects. But how would they fit in with the community benefit plan that only has a specified few contractors that are going to be allowed to work on those, and they have to be union members? So how are we going to be able to get those people to work on government jobs and municipal jobs and stuff like that when the NDP government has limited the people that can only work on those? Thank you.
Good.
Thank you, Doug. Do you have any more rebuttals on the floor?
Should I answer to that?
If you want to use a rebuttal, yeah. So we have another rebuttal. Doug Routley, NDP.
Yeah, what Doug is referring to are community benefits agreements. They only apply to major infrastructure projects that are in the billions of dollars. What I'm talking about are a number of distributed local projects. The first of which was shoreline cleanup of plastic, which took tens of thousands of pounds of plastic waste off of our beaches. That was led by local First Nations, but the work was carried out by workers displaced from the tourism industry. So we're going to take people from the hospitality industries, retrain them, put them to work taking care of seniors, and all those jobs will be local hires, and they'll be driven and organized and motivated by local government, First Nations, and other stakeholders. But as I said, our role is to facilitate. So that investment will, 18,000 jobs per year is what we expect, full-time, brilliant job.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, any other rebuttals on the floor? Okay, so we will move to the next candidate, Chris Istash from the Green Party. Would you like me to repeat the initial question, Chris?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Jenna.
Okay. What plan does your party have to recover from the economic devastation and deficit spending caused by the COVID-19 pandemic? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Jenna. This one's really personal to me. As I've mentioned in my opening statement, I'm a small business owner with my wife, and we've been small business owners for 17 years. Our business closed for 2 months with COVID, and we spent that time working with our local community and in my role in the BIA, seeing firsthand how devastating it was and the struggles we went through with people not seeing the provincial government for them readily there. And so, I see what people are going through. With that, what I like that the BC Greens are doing is we're getting rid of the complex system in there and putting money directly in the hands of small businesses. We're putting $300 million forward for rent relief directly to those small businesses, not where it's into their landlord's hands and a complex system and only the landlord agrees to it. We need businesses to have those funds right away. And as well, moving forward with the tourism sector, I do that work as a freelance writer and photographer, supporting ecotourism throughout BC. I travel and support those actual companies and seeing how much they mean across BC. It's actually one of our largest industries, so we need to be there for them. As well, if we actually move back from investing in fossil fuels industries, there's $1 billion we can put directly into small businesses, innovative businesses, ecotourism, sport tourism, the wide array of all our businesses in there, but we keep giving it to the fossil fuel industry. We want to move forward with universal basic income, and we want to move forward with towards the renewable sector. All the other parties have said prior, they agree there is going to be there is a deficit, but we need to invest now so that we don't have a bigger hole in the future to dig out of. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, third candidate to respond to the pre-selected question, Dr. Patterson, Liberal. Would you like me to repeat the question, Doc?
Sure.
Okay. What plan does your party have to recover from the economic devastation and deficit spending caused by the COVID-19 pandemic? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Jenna. The only way to truly recover from the economic hole that we're in right now due to COVID-19 is to focus on growing the economy and creating jobs. We cannot just abandon business and their employees and expect this province to get back on track. This is why the BC Liberal Party have promised to take real action to invest in our economy in the future. We have proposed eliminating the PST for a year and it to 3% for the following year to leave more money in the pockets of British Columbians and to encourage investment in our economy. We've also promised to cut the small business tax to allow the small businesses to make up 98% of our economy and employ hundreds of thousands of British Columbians to make ends meet during this difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc. No rebuttals on the floor, correct? Okay. All right, we will move into the second question of our pre-selected questions. Again, candidates have seen this question previous to this forum. Second question, in your opinion, what one issue, which would be beyond the pandemic response discussed in the earlier question, is the most important for this riding, and how will you and your party address this? And we will begin with Chris Istash from the Green Party. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Jenna. I see it every single day. We see it on the local Facebook community group chats. I see it in the discussions in the cafes and with my fellow business owners. Number one in our region is housing affordability, and through the whole spectrum, the people that can afford homes, the with homeless, with the low income earners, the middle income earners. We're seeing people can't move to the region. There's no vacancy. We're struggling with vacancy in new builds, with affordable builds, with rentals. The lower income earners can't afford to move to smaller towns where there's job openings and there's work, but they can't even move there. They can't afford to live there. And the BC Green sees this is vital, that we should be able to live in a equal manner in our own communities and not be forced out because we can't afford that. So on our platform, what we're pushing forward for is the right away, anybody that is spending more than 30% of their income on rentals, we would bridge that gap. Of course, it would be means tested to make sure the funds go to those who need it. As well, bringing back more emphasis on co-op housing and offer crown land or supporting leases, because co-op housing is a means for people that have their in ownership and having their property, but far below market values. And then helping nonprofits build affordable housing and social housing and bringing those back into the markets. And then lastly, we need to look at skyrocketing insurance rates and make sure that stratas homeowners aren't being affected with the scare that we had on insurance rates. And as well, pushing for more triplexes and townhouses and internal infill and density in small communities.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, second candidate is Doug Patterson, Liberal Party. In your opinion, what one issue beyond the pandemic response discussed previously is the most important for this riding, and how will you and your party address this? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Jenna. In Nanaimo, North Cowichan, we have been feeling the impact of the forestry crisis, and we need a government that will properly invest in the industry and get it back to where it needs to be. Under the NDP, since the start of 2019, there have been 45 full or partial mill closures in BC. Over 10,000 workers have lost their job in BC's forest industry, some of them here on Vancouver Island. The BC Liberals are committed to revitalizing the forest industry and supporting forestry independent communities. We will implement a more efficient, effective, and responsive market pricing stumpage system to help keep our industry competitive. Work with industry to modernize forest management practices and ensure BC's forest industry is no longer the highest cost producer in North America. Aggressively work with the federal government to make real progress and reach a fair resolution to the softwood lumber dispute that works for BC. Increase investment in the silviculture to enhance the province's tree planting efforts and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Introduce legislation to protect the working forest to provide increased certainty on the land base while protecting and enhancing environmental values. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Third candidate, in your opinion, which is Doug Routley, NDP.
Yes, thank you. I would say definitely that housing and homelessness is the most pressing, urgent need in the riding. All of the others are important, but it's right in front of us. We all see it. We are implementing a 10-year housing plan, and it's focused around our housing hub model, which helps connect people and helps connect developers. We are going to have them expand low interest loans. They will partner with co-ops and nonprofits to buy existing rental stock and keep it rental. And we are instructing them to examine new ways to build equity, rent to own, and other equity building mechanisms that we can help people get into the housing market. We're freezing rents until the end of 2021, and after that, they will be attached to the cost of living adjustment, COLA. We are income testing and then providing a $400 rebate to renters. That's for people earning up to $80,000. We are reducing construction costs by, we're going to change parking minimums for buildings that are close to transit. We're going to have a single window permitting process, and we're going to work with local governments to streamline their processes. So with the strata insurance, which is a big challenge, We're having the BCFSA look at new ways to reduce that cost. But if we can't, by the end of 2021, we will develop a public strata insurance option similar to what's in Saskatchewan. So we are providing rental supplements. In the region alone, from Nanaimo to Cowichan, we've already built or started over 1,000 units. And we are very proud of that. That's from supportive to seniors to low income, family oriented. But the full spectrum is what we need, and we need a government willing to support that.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, third question posed to the candidates. The following question has been prepared by our sponsor, Vancouver Island Real Estate Board. Realtors strongly support governments making housing affordability a key priority. We feel that improvising housing supply for homeowners and renters can be accomplished by streamlining approval processes by employee initiatives identified in the government's recent Development Approval Process Review Report. If your party forms the next government, will you commit to adopting these measures to streamline approvals and bring housing supply to the market in a more timely manner? Our first speaker, Doug Patterson, Liberal.
Thank you, Jenna. Excuse me. The BC Liberals do know the importance of housing supply. Creating more supply must be our focus if we want to increase housing affordability. The NDP have utterly failed at this, building less than 3,000 units in 3 years, despite their promise to build 114,000 in 10. This means that at their current rate, it will take the NDP more than 100 years to reach their goal. Last week, the BC Liberals announced a $1.75 billion housing plan, which will include dramatically increase the affordable housing for renters and make housing more affordable for home buyers, provide real relief for condo and townhouse owners affected by the strata crisis, provide tax relief measures to help people hurt by the COVID-19 economic impacts to keep their homes, modernize the outdated permitting system, implement higher property taxes for non-residents of Canada. Rather than penalizing homeowners, we will introduce a real plan to target foreign speculators. And as well as by working and creating an active and vibrant economy, such as forestry, etc., putting more people back to work instead of shutting the mills down. We'll have more paychecks coming into communities, and that is what will help bring down or create affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Next speaker, Doug Routley, NDP.
Thanks. Yeah, I think we covered a little bit of it in terms of the permitting ideas. We are definitely committed to the recommendations, but we're doing a lot more than that. And I don't know where Doug gets his numbers, but just in this riding, there are 790 housing units that have been completed or are under construction, and the remaining 300 odd, 400 odd are in permitting or planning stages, but they're underway. So we feel very proud of that. We know that this is an important part of this whole mix, but there are also other issues. There's the opioid crisis and mental health, which is obviously a huge problem with people who are living on the street. We see that in front of us every day, and it alarms us. We've created a standalone mental health and addictions ministry, and we're providing more supports for children in school, particularly mental health issues, so that we catch these problems before they become life-alteringly damaging. So that's a very important aspect of this. But we also know that we have to provide a variety of options. That's why we became the first province in Canada to build on-reserve housing in partnership with First Nations. We are looking at, we were already building tens of thousands of student housing units throughout the province at the various universities. We are committed to continuing that. We are committed to expanding it to include more people, expanding rent supplements to include more seniors in particular, and then providing more home care so that seniors are able to stay in their homes. So housing is an incredibly complex issue that needs to be addressed from virtually every aspect of government's operations.
Thank you, Doug. Next speaker on this question, Chris Istash, Green Party.
Thank you, Jenna. On this one, we can talk as the Liberals and NDP have been about putting money there and bringing forward the supports. But the biggest call that the developers and realtors and local communities have called is they need support from government and clearing up the clutter and the bureaucracy and getting the ministries speaking together so that it's simple when you come forward with an idea and you want to be that one that you're a business and you're trying to make a better livable community, that it's easy to do, that you can come forward and you meet the regulations for the environment ministry, only to run into a roadblock with BC Hydro and then to run in a roadblock with the next ministry. So we really need to listen what's being said at UBCM about helping the multiple local governments and communities and regional districts develop new official community plans like we're seeing in North Cowichan right now that is aligned across the province. Have funding for local governments to support them so that the entire province is on the same page, so that one builder's trying to do something in Ladysmith but then can't do it in the CVRD or can't do it in North Cowichan or the RDN because there isn't consistency across the provincial government. So first, we need to clean up the system. We need to do better as government so that when we put supports there as government or developers are coming to the table from the private and public sectors, they can do it efficiently and get housing quicker and the housing we need. So we need consistency across the region. We need to show and respect the differences in the local communities, but really need to help the local governments develop their OCPs that address the climate and modern, passive, and renewable building standards.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, that concludes the pre-selected part of the forum. We're going to take a 10-minute break and come back and start the random questions for the candidates. We'll be back. Yep, okay. All right, Mark. We'll start her up again. Welcome back. We're here with the candidates for the 2020 Provincial All Candidates Forum. We are here with Chris Istash from the Green Party, Doug Patterson from the Liberal Party, and Doug Routley from NDP. We will be moving into the second half of this forum. This is the random question portion of the forum. A series of questions have been posed to the candidates. These questions have not been provided, will be provided to the candidates. These questions have not been provided in advance and have been prepared by forum sponsors and through community consultation. Again, the candidates will be given 2 minutes each to respond to each question. Rebuttals are allowed during this portion of the forum. Okay, we will begin with our first question. Even before the pandemic, unsustainably high property tax bills threatened the viability of many small businesses. Today, with the impacts of COVID-19, these taxes could sink them permanently. Workable solutions to the highest and best use property assessment challenge and the gap between residential and commercial industrial mill rates need to be found. If elected, what will your party do to embrace regulatory tax changes to ensure small businesses' sustainability and growth? The order we will go in: first, Doug Routley, NDP.
Thank you. We have already taken the steps to plan for some of the changes that are necessary, and one of them is to have a single window permitting process in the provincial government, which will improve the situation considerably. I think when you look at property taxes, local mix between industrial, commercial, and residential, each community is different. So it behooves the provincial government to have supports that are flexible for communities. What we have done is we've deferred property tax during this pandemic, in this crisis. We've also taken steps to support small business by reducing the small business income tax by 20%. So that was a step that we felt was necessary and happened before the pandemic. The pandemic has changed everything for everyone of us in every local government, every small community, every large community. So the challenges are different. The costs of doing business have changed. The challenges that local government face in order to deliver the same services often now involved inflated costs. So all of this needs to be considered, and we are open to that. We have also increased the provincial share on infrastructure projects to 40% from 33% in order to encourage local governments and put local governments in a position of having to carry less debt to achieve their goals. And we've also provided planning money for communities in order to better deal with some of these problems of property tax challenges. But local governments are very limited in the tools that they have, and we're looking for ways, innovative ways through UBCM recommendations and others to increase that toolbox.
Thank you, Doug. This question is now posed to Chris Istash from the Green Party.
Thank you, Jenna. First and foremost, the reason we're seeing such a burden on residents, small businesses, the commercial classes throughout the areas is the constant downloading of responsibility to local city councils and regional district boards. They only have one revenue stream to provide for their communities, and that's through property taxes. And when we download more responsibility to the provincial government from the provincial government and not doing those infrastructure projects, the only recourse that local governments have is to increase taxes, and that needs to end. And that does involve taking the responsibility on the sewer projects, the infrastructure, the water, the roads, doing more that used to be done in Canada. The higher levels of government always looked out for their communities and invested in their communities. So once we start taking that responsibility back, only then will the local governments be able to do the work they need to do without burdening their residents and their businesses. So it's definitely all about responsibility. And then to that as well, we need to ensure, as you know, the taxation system properly, but then, you know, talk of other groups, you know, cutting PST, that's, again, then we're not going to have the money to do the responsible things to help cut those costs and help the businesses along. So definitely it's all of, first and foremost is about taking our responsibility at the provincial level and then working with those local governments. And then as well as being the next level of government, we need to go higher and really start advocating as MLAs to the federal level together as BC and tell the federal government to step up the plate and do their share as well. They used to lead the country in the infrastructure, and now they as well have downloaded to provinces, and then it's hitting the local governments. We need to change that.
Thank you, Chris. Same question posed to Doug Patterson, Liberal.
Thank you, Jenna. Having been a town councillor for over 30 years, this is an item or a question that I've heard many, many times, and one that is quite justified. As the other two candidates said, though, municipalities are very, very limited on where they get their money from. And one of the big things that needs to be done, and I would push the BC Liberal Party to initiate it as soon as possible, is to work with municipalities and the UBCM on refining how the permitting system works and the taxation system works, and work with municipalities on finding other sources of revenue. Chris mentioned that we're limited. We are limited, but there is lots of other opportunities that we could entertain to generate. North Cowichan has their community forest, which employs, my understanding, 40, 50 people. You know, we could work with municipalities to find alternate sources of revenue where we can decrease the tax burden on our small business and decrease the tax burden all across the categories. It's a limited pot of money, and but even taking it on as provincially and federally, where do the tax dollars come from? They come from you and I and small business. So whether we pass it up the ladder or down the ladder, it's the taxpayer that is paying the bulk of it. So we need to find other ways of creating revenue so we can assist all our local citizens, whether they're industry, business, or residential, to lessen the burden. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. We have a rebuttal on the floor. Doug Routley, NDP.
Yes, it's not so much a rebuttal as it is to say a little bit more about this very important subject, not just from the point of view of the challenges of small business from the perspective of property tax, because if a business is thriving, it ideally will be able to meet those costs if there is a responsible local government, and I think we have those. So another aspect of this is that the government itself is a huge player in the economy. The largest consumer of goods and services on Vancouver Island is Island Health. So we have moved to make it possible for small businesses, easier for small businesses to participate in providing services to government and qualify. And we have also taken steps for a local food consumption in our institutions like hospitals and such. This is the way we can provide support to businesses that is not directly relieving them of a tax burden, but using public resources to increase their market and increase their opportunities.
Thank you, Doug. We have a rebuttal on the floor. Doug Patterson, Liberal.
Well, not a rebuttal, just a question. Mr. Routley just added to his comment and extended his time frame where the other two of us did not get an opportunity to do that. I don't think Mr. Routley's last comment was a rebuttal.
Yeah, so every time you raise your hand, it's classified as a rebuttal. You have 3 in the entire forum. So Doug has used 2. Correct? Okay. Okay. Next question posed to all 3 candidates. What does your party have to advance reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities? And we will begin with Chris Istash from the Green Party.
Thank you for the question, Jenna. Absolutely, building on the leadership of Adam Olson and the work he's done with DRIPA, and understanding that we first need to address how we're looking at the biggest on the plate is the fossil fuel industry. And it's the largest point of contention in BC. And that goes to the root of understanding the cultural awareness of we need to treat the environment sustainably, and that everything we do is connected. And we keep missing that voice and not listening to that. I remember being down in Victoria in January and listening to the Wet'suwet'en youth and standing there all day out in the cold winter weather, and their constant pleas that they're not being listened to. We need to come to the table, provide space, and listen faithfully, and until we start addressing how we keep pushing through projects time and time again, from flooding out valleys in Site C and wiping out entire cultural history, pushing Trans Mountain through, the Coastal Gas Link, where only Adam Olson was the only one of the only provincial, I believe, that went there and listened to them. So we do need to start listening and being at the table and stop forcing through fossil fuel projects. We need to work with First Nations and foster energy independence and start working with BC Hydro and the BC Utilities Commission to start bringing that. We need to definitely address the salmon industry and listen to the First Nations as some of the greatest understanding in the province. And then we also need to keep working on their communities.
Thank you, Chris. Same question posed to Doug Patterson, Liberal Party.
Thank you, Jenna. Reconciliation is more than just economics, more than just the Wet'suwet'en LNG. It's more than just Trans Mountain. It's encompassing the whole province. The economics of our province, being white or First Nation or East Asian or whatever, there is a lot of unknowns and indecision right now because none of this has been really settled. I would strongly encourage the BC Liberals to set up a department that is just strictly to do with reconciliation, and not just treaties in with the Nuchalnuth and other First Nation communities, but for the whole province. Treaties and binding agreements that work for both. I've had the opportunity of meeting and sitting down with people from Halal and Snenamus, and I believe that I get along very well with them. We need to listen and partner. This is holding up the economy of BC. So the BC Liberals will pay attention and work and resolve the issues sooner than later. It's a subject that we just can't talk about like the NDP. It's something that we need to take action on, and the BC Liberals are willing to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Same question posed to Doug Routley, NDP.
Thank you. Well, I will tell you what we've done. We've committed $3 billion of gaming revenue, which is not a handout, as been described by one of the candidates. It is an investment. It is, in fact, a small fraction of what has been taken from the lands of First Nations. We are committed to reconciliation. And as Chief Stuart Phillips said, reconciliation is not for wimps. It's a very difficult thing. There is no one homogeneous view on LNG, old growth, or any other issue that faces us. There is a vast array of or spectrum of positions, and we have to respect the processes that are being developed by First Nations themselves in order to interact with our government. And we are doing that. We have invested in cultural preservation and revitalization of languages. We are connecting Aboriginal friendship centers and increasing their funding. We are creating a culturally appropriate justice mechanism through the Attorney General. We are also doing a modernization and review of the Policing Act because we know there is systemic racism in our system, and we need to find ways to get around that. So we've also enabled the government to collect race-based data, which it couldn't do before. So that will help us examine some of these problems. We're building housing on reserve, the first province ever to do that. We've handed the responsibility for child and family services back to many nations. In Nanaimo, we have had a reconciliation and land transfer agreements too, which transferred 3,000 hectares on Mount Benson and Mount McKay. Those are local initiatives, but there is so much more to do. And we are fully committed to the principles of UNDRIP, but also embedding them in all the legislation of the province. That is a huge project, and we are well underway in that, but we need your help to continue that project.
Thank you, Doug. We have a rebuttal on the floor. Chris Istash, Green Party.
Thanks, Jenna. Just to remind people that, as we had, Adam walked through proudly as a BC Green MLA that worked very hard on bringing the DRIPA bill to the legislature floor. We had RCMP snipers taking aim at the Wet'suwet'en First Nations and the other local nations that came there to support them. At the same time that was happening, we need to remember that the RCMP oversight is provincially over that. And so the words were there, but the intention didn't follow through. And on the gaming revenue, absolutely, it's an awesome program, but it's only a fraction of what we need to be doing. Again, we need to actually foster true economic resilience and independence. And until that happens, and we change the way we force through fossil fuel projects, we're not at the table with true intentions.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, next question posed to all three candidates. The following question has been prepared by our sponsor, Vancouver Island Real Estate Board. While the pandemic has weighed heavily on the minds of British Columbians, climate change remains an existential threat to the planet. As many homeowners consider renovation projects, they also need to think about ways that they can improve their home's energy efficiency and reduce its carbon footprint. Do you support BC Real Estate Association's recommendation for expanding and enhancing an incentive-based energy retrofit plan to meet the dual goals of addressing climate change and supporting a post-pandemic economic recovery? This question is first posed to Duck Patterson of the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Jenna. That's absolutely fantastic. I believe a good start in that is the BC Liberals plan to eliminate the PST for a year and then go to 3%. Hopefully that will encourage residential to go and buy stuff to retrofit their homes. I also believe very strongly that we need to work with the federal government, and out of all building and climate change products to retrofit homes to help eliminate or cut back on climate change is take the GST off of those products as well. And that will bring down the cost amazingly, so that you and I can go out and get the solar panels or get the heat pumps and do all the things that are necessary to reduce the cost of retrofitting our homes and helping to eliminate greenhouse gases. It will take a bit more bureaucracy to oversee this, but it's something that I believe is very feasible, and it's something that I would push the BC Liberals to take up on. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Same question posed to Doug Routley, NDP.
Thank you. Yes, we do support and we do provide that kind of support to people currently, but we're proposing to expand those kind of supports, but also not just to buildings, but also to things like electric vehicles. We're proposing an income tested subsidy to get people into electric vehicles who can't otherwise afford it. People who can afford it are already benefiting from subsidies to their transition. So we're going to find ways for ordinary people to do that, not just those who are privileged enough at this moment. There's also a vast array of other issues that affect this, like the building code. We have proposed that all buildings be net zero emissions by 2032. And that will, in Vancouver, when they moved to a building code which was more aggressive on the environmental side, developers immediately leapfrogged to the third or fourth of 5 stages in order to be more competitive when their projects came online. So this 2032 date is a target that doesn't interfere with the value of projects already underway, but it in fact will, we expect, be early adopted by the industry so that it will be easier for people to buy into that kind of housing. But in the meantime, the retrofit problem is already being supported by programs of government. And I would be happy to connect anyone to that, should I be fortunate enough to be reelected. And we have been doing that. There's also rent programs and COVID relief that help people get through these times and make these investments. So many people were in the middle of this when all of this problem hit. So we understand that problem. We're trying to make programs as flexible as possible, and we're trying to let communities lead what those will look like in each case as much as possible.
Thank you, Doug. Same question posed to Chris Istash from Green Party.
Hi, Jenna. Thanks for this question. This one's I'm really excited about, actually, because I have this future vision where we're not giving at the tune we're at right now, $1 billion a year in subsidies to LNG and frack gas and giving money away to multinationals. Could you imagine what we could do in 1 year if we were putting that money back into the building industry and helping homeowners put retrofitting of solar, heat pumps, hooking, as the other NDP candidate said, the electric vehicles, and helping them put in car chargers in their homes, and then never talk about even adding in the Site C money, where we're flooding an entire valley in a project that's going to escalate past $12 billion. What if we put that back into the retrofit program? These massive subsidies that are having every year into the fossil fuel industry, when that money would be so much better suited investing in our homeowners all across the province to have homes more equipped for the changing climate. They're more energy efficient, which drives down the cost of home ownership in our daily lives and the affordability. And as well, it creates a massive, across the entire province, job stimulation. Now we have electricians and home builders and post-secondary institutions have new students getting trained in advancing technologies and building passive homes. The benefit that the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board would see through all their membership and the benefit of better, more sustainable, livable communities where we're not investing into fossil fuels, but we're actually investing into people's homes and their daily lives and impacting the affordability of them to live every day. I'm excited for that future, and that's why I'm running as a BC Green MLA. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. We have rebuttal on the floor. Doug Routley, this is your last rebuttal.
Thank you. I think it's really important when we make fairly simplistic statements about things like subsidies that we examine what we're actually talking about. And the bulk of that subsidy is in fact ensuring that the industry drills 20% fewer wells. It is a cutting in half of royalties for the final 25% of a well's capacity because it's so much more expensive to extract that gas. Before, the companies would just leave it, cap that well, and it would leak, and they drill 5 wells instead of 4. So and that is not money that the government gives to those companies. They forgive half the royalties in order to make an environmental gain. So just like when the Liberals say rip up regulations, some of them protect people. Just like this, some of those subsidies actually help the environment and our economy at the same time. So we need to be careful about the consequences of what we propose.
Thank you, Doug. We have a rebuttal on the floor. Chris Istash, Green Party.
Thank you, Jenna. And to the NDP candidate, to remind him that I worked 20 years in the oil and gas industry in the production side, and I know what it takes, and I know the importance of abandoning wells and what goes on, but I also know the massive methane that's far more potent than carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. But, you know, call the subsidies we want. We know that the Liberals started it with this massive hole of debt that we're sitting with the LNG royalties, and the NDP has carried on with it. Those subsidies are sitting in there. So I firmly believe that we should not be supporting a dying industry that doesn't have a future in BC, and investing in homeowners, the building industry, passive homes, renewable homes, solar, and a innovation and stronger future.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, we'll move to the next question posed to all 3 candidates. Since the termination of the Ladysmith and District Hospital in 2007, there are many in Ladysmith who feel that there has been an overall decline in accessibility and quality of healthcare in our community. What is your position regarding the current healthcare availability, effectiveness, appropriateness, and the future direction in Ladysmith? This question goes to Doug Routley, NDP.
Thank you. We certainly plan to increase our rural funding and opportunities for smaller communities to access health care funding. But in the region, we have made a number of investments. We're building a new hospital in the Cowichan Valley. We're building a new ICU unit in Nanaimo. We bought an extra MRI machine, and we're running both of those machines 24 hours a day, doing 7,000 more MRIs in this region per year. We, in Island Health as overall, the number of surgeries canceled was over 10,000. And now by February, Island Health will be caught up with those surgeries as well as current needs. So I think we've reduced wait times for hip and knee surgeries by 40%. And these are the ways that we do these things, but it is always difficult in the tension between how do you provide services to each person in each community. In certain cases, it's absolutely necessary to concentrate those services in order to provide the most up-to-date technology and care. And then there are opportunities that smaller communities don't get because they don't have as quick or immediate access to service. The people in Gabriola created their own primary health care center, and that has its challenges. So part of my job, and the job of anybody who's elected to this constituency, representing 6 local governments, 6 First Nations, several inhabited islands with 6 ferry terminals, is to work to position all of those communities as best as possible to receive as much support as possible. And that's my job, and I commit to continuing to do that with the various foundations in Ladysmith, including healthcare.
Thank you, Doug. Same question posed to Chris Istesh, Green Party.
Thank you, Jenna. Yeah, our hospitals are keenly important, and it's inspiring to see the constant work that Sonia's been doing in the immediate region there, where the new hospital is going to be going, making it more accessible for everybody to get the health care they need. And we see it in Chemainus as well, that people have to travel and are looking for family doctors and trying to get the health care that they need, but making it in a way that it's affordable and accessible. The BC Greens are committed to continuing to roll out the expanded network for accessibility of these health cares. And as well, we want to develop a task force immediately to find a way that balances these resources across the region. And as the NDP candidate said, to all those multiple levels of government, and bringing everybody together in this task force to find out how it's best suited with the highest return on investment for taxpayers so that they get the health care they need. We need to as well consult with physicians and the stakeholders to improve the efficiency and to reduce the administrative barriers in place and help more doctors come to the area. If we're more efficient, we can serve more people and do a better job as government in our public healthcare system. Our social programs are the root of BC and what we're actually leaders in the country on, especially as we've seen under Dr. Bonnie Henry. So we need to make sure that more doctors, the accessibility is there, and definitely the task force to make it all work together. And then a big scope is bringing that mental health under the healthcare banner so that we look at prevention of issues we're seeing in the healthcare system right now in regards to definitely the opioid crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Same question posed to Doug Patterson, Liberal Party.
Thank you, Janet. And I really have to agree with the bulk of what the other 2 candidates have said. Healthcare is probably the most important item right now with the baby boomers aging and stuff. It's just like, I'm not too sure how many times that John Horgan and Doug can announce. They announced that last election that they're going to build a hospital in the Cowichan Valley, and Mr. Horgan was in Duncan not that many weeks ago announcing that they're going to build a hospital in the Cowichan Valley, and there still is no money being set aside for that. Also, the closure of the Ladysmith Hospital was started before 2007 by the NDP government at the time, and Jan Pullinger was the MLA. I believe the healthcare facility we have there right now is quite efficient. And what we need to do is try and expand on that. Healthcare is very, very expensive. And the more we do, the more it's going to cost. So we need to find ways of, there is lots of space in that facility right now, and other people are using it, such as mental health advocates, etc. Finding more doctors and encouraging more doctors to come to small town BC would be one of the most important items in healthcare that I would push the BC Liberals. And getting more nurse first practitioners, so people would have immediate attention, but also having hospitals, if you look at the bigger picture, and this isn't going to help my cause any, but we're not really...
Doc, not to interrupt, we did have an error with the time, and I was watching the time, and your 2 minutes is complete.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we'll have Mark reset the clock, so we're ready to roll. Any rebuttals? Okay. Next question. Describe your party's position on the future of natural resource industries like forestry and LNG. We start with Chris Pistache, Green Party.
As you'd heard, I talked on this a bit earlier. The LNG issue is a perfect example of corporate welfare, where to the tune, the BC Liberals started with $558 million a year in subsidies to LNG Canada. And now in the 2019, it escalated up to $998 million in subsidies to LNG Canada. The BC Greens voted against 14 times, where the NDP and Liberal came together on that. Clearly, we know where they stand, and it's not in the future of the environment. It's continuing to invest in multinational companies. It's the LNG Canada is 5 multinational, non-Canadian corporations that are taking our resource. Of course, there's jobs, but those jobs aren't sustainable in a glut we're seeing in a depressed LNG market. And then the profits from this company, as well as that PST cut and those massive subsidies, are leaving the country. On the topic of old growth, we have to stop immediately, put the moratorium in place, and let science look at it. Strategic review was in place, and it was only a deferral of that old growth strategy. When you actually look at what we think of places like Cathedral Grove or the Walloran Valley, it's only 1% currently protected. And of course, we need to take care of our forestry industry, and that's by investing in our local mills. There's 3 wood mills, 2 pulp mills. We need to keep those mills running and long into the future, and old growth isn't there. That if we continue at the pace we're doing, in 10 years, there's no more old growth. We need to invest right now into our mills so that they can do a sustainable second growth forestry, and investing into the more sustainable foresters, making value added in our communities, and more jobs in our communities. And then the revenues taken out of logging needs to come back to our communities.
Thank you, Chris. Same question posed to Doug Patterson, Liberal Party.
BC, the most prosperous province in the whole country, was built by people working in the forestry, mining, fishing, and all those industries. And that is what built us, and that is what is going to keep us strong. We need to work hand in hand with the environment. And I can bring up when we lived in Alberni, back in the 70s, there was huge emission problems with the pulp mill. There's fly ash, the canal looked like tar. Over a period of a few years, they solved that. You can go up and catch fish in the Alberni Canal now. When it snows, it's still white. So it does take time to solve some of these problems. And the BC Liberals are totally behind working economically, generating revenue from forestry, LNG, oil and gas, but working in tune with the environment and coming to solutions. It's not going to be solved overnight, but we cannot eliminate all these good jobs and depend on government to be paying for everything that needs to be done. Because if we don't have those jobs, we don't have people paying good taxes, and we're not going to get to the point where we want to be: a clean, sustainable, economic, vibrant, environmentally friendly province. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Same question posed to Doug Routley, NDP party.
Thank you. Yeah, with LNG, we have been in favor of LNG done responsibly, and we have been as long as I've been in MLA. The BC NDP has put conditions on the table that must be met: protecting air, land, and water, guaranteeing First Nations participation, local benefit, as well as benefit to the province. When it comes to the subsidies, most of what's been referred to as subsidies to LNG Canada is in fact deferred debt that becomes payable once the project is completed. So there's definitely a different perspective on that. When it comes to old growth, we appointed an old growth panel that went around the province, met with thousands of people. I had a 3-hour discussion with a protest outside my office. Out of that, we formed an advisory panel that we put together a report. We submitted that report to the old growth panel, and the group presented it to them, and it has impacted the decisions. And now Premier Horgan, John, a couple of days ago, announced a paradigm shift in the way forests will be managed, old growth in particular, towards managing for ecosystem health. But we know we have to balance that with the economic impacts, and that we need to take care of the forest in a sustainable way for communities, environment, and economy. And that's what we're doing. In fact, the one step that we're taking in this platform is to guarantee increased fiber supply for companies that have more employment. So basically, it's access to fiber in trade for jobs. And that's a very important step to take. We are reducing raw log exports as much as possible without seriously impacting the industry. And we are working with First Nations for partnerships like the Mid-Island Forest Initiative on the island here, the Pachidat Agreement, and the new agreements with the Snuneymuxw on Mount Benson and Mount McKay. Those.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you. Okay, we have a rebuttal on the floor. Doug Patterson, Liberal Party, and then we'll go to Chris.
Thank you, Jenna. If the NDP are so strongly believing in the economy and the growth and good jobs in BC, and they stand behind the LNG project, I want to ask Doug why one of their star candidates, Vancouver Hastings, Nika Sharma, is raising money for Stand Earth and is sending emails out to their supporters. Now, Stand Earth is a San Francisco-based American environmental group, and they're sending out emails asking people to contribute dollars to them so they can send activists into BC to stop these projects. And this is from Maria, who is somebody at Stand Earth, and it's signed by Nika Sharma, lawyer and senior oil and gas campaigner, who is the NDP candidate for Vancouver Hastings and is
Thank you, Doug.
Projects.
Thank you. Okay, we move to rebuttal from Chris Istash from the Green Party.
Thank you, Jenna. Real quick, all the communities across this region, including Nanaimo, declared a climate emergency. Nowhere in the future of addressing climate energy do subsidies for fossil fuels exist. We cannot do that. On the logging, we can't continue to liquidate our natural resources at the benefit of shareholders, massive corporations, while taking money out of our communities and devastating them with an unsustainable future. As to Mr. Routley's comments on that protest that came to his constituency office, he said himself, "There's nothing I can do." That speaks to the NDP whipping, whereas he does have good faith and he is listening and he hears that, but he can't do anything because the NDP falls in line and has whip votes, and the NDP has to stay in unison, where the Green Party we can act faithfully to our residents.
Thank you, Chris. Doug, unfortunately, you don't have any rebuttals left, but you are welcome to address this at another time during the forum.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move to the next question. You're looking to use your final rebuttal, Doug?
No, I just had a question. Is that a rebuttal if I ask a question?
If you're asking me a question about logistics, no.
Can I transfer a rebuttal to another candidate? I have one left, right?
You have one left. You're the only one with it left. I don't actually know the answer to that. Mark Drysdale, do you want to speak to that?
You know, I don't, that's unprecedented. I don't see why we couldn't allow that. It's, yeah.
Okay, you can transfer your rebuttal, then there'll be no further rebuttals left on the floor.
Well, Doug seemed quite upset, so I would like to listen to his answer. So I'm throwing it over there.
Okay, Doug Routley, you have a 1 minute rebuttal.
Okay, I'll use the first 10 seconds of it to thank Duck. I really appreciate that. It's a very civil thing to do, and I've known him for a very long time. When I heard he was running, I told the reporter, well, I love Duck. I don't love his choice of party, but thank you very much. Chris, that is simply not true. I never said I could do nothing. I did something. I brought those people together. That's what you do in government. You bring people together and you hear them. You work for compromise. They worked amongst themselves to come to compromises. They made excellent recommendations, which they personally presented to that panel through my office. And so the effectiveness of an MLA is not driven from somewhere else. It's in the work that we do. And I feel proud that I stood out there for 3 hours and answered hundreds of questions from those people. We formed a group. We did very positive work. It's what I believe all of us should be doing. So I object to the way you characterized my response. It is absolutely untrue, and I'm sure you didn't mean it that way.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, we have no further rebuttals on the floor. We have time for one more random question for each candidate. Same question will be posed to all three of you. Next question. The following question has been prepared by our sponsor, Vancouver Island Real Estate Board. Many owners of strata properties in BC have faced unprecedented increases in their insurance premiums, dramatically impacting affordability and causing challenges in the purchase and sale of strata units. While this is a complex issue, one recommendation from BCREA is to provide more training to strata council members so that they can too make more informed decisions to reduce the risk of major claims in their building. Would your party support making such training mandatory? And we begin with Duck Patterson, Liberal Party.
Thank you, Jenna. Of course, anything that can be done to take this huge unforeseen burden, and from what I've been able to read, totally unnecessary burden off of strata unit owners and strata councils. It really doesn't seem fair. I'm not totally knowledgeable about it, but my understanding is when issues happen in some strata units, yes, it could have the effect of involving 2 or 3 or even more of the living units. But not all of the strata units are built like that, like condos and townhouses. So getting BC Housing involved to work with strata units to set up a proper code of safety, a proper code of how to mitigate potential issues should be uppermost, but also working with strata units, strata councils, and insurance companies to come up with solutions and ways of keeping the cost of their premiums down. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Same question posed to Doug Routley, NDP.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a huge problem, and it's threatening the viability of people owning their homes. If they can't get insurance, we're in a real pickle here. And so this developed as a kind of a free failure of the private market to provide the insurance without loopholes. So loopholes have developed, and we have closed those loopholes in the Strata Insurance Act. And by doing that, we ensure that maintenance schedules are maintained, are kept, carried out, and then reduce the risk for companies. We've also asked the BC Financial and Securities Authority to examine the problem and look for ways to reduce the cost, look for ways within the market and working with those companies. Now, if that is not successful and hasn't relieved this pressure, by the end of 2021, we have committed to developing a public option similar to what is working well in Saskatchewan to provide an option for stratas that can't get insurance, because it's wholly unacceptable and will be a threat to the entire marketplace if that happens. I'd like to commend the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board for their work over many years in dealing with both this and property transfer tax issues, and as well, particularly for our region, flood mitigation issues. It's this kind of work and engagement with government that gets things done, really changes policy and creates a better community. So it's commendable that the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board assumes this leadership role in our region, and I appreciate their work.
Thank you, Doug. Same question posed to Chris Istash from Green Party.
Thanks, Jenna. Yeah, this one is actually something that came up in a recent conversation. I've got a friend that moved from Chemainus to Ladysmith, and they're having a hard time selling their home because it does involve a strata, and the fear there of the increasing rates and insurance and what they're going through, and that they're stranded right now with a house that isn't selling because of that, and we can't have that happening to our residents. So the BC Green Party wants to immediately convene a task force to look at this. We need to get on this right away, and we need to bring everybody to the table that's involved, and that would be, as Doug had mentioned, the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board, the stratas, the homeowners, the insurance companies, and get to the root of this, and following up on the BC Financial Securities Authority's investigation and bringing that to the table and really making meaningful change. Insurance and to our homes shouldn't be an obstacle to affording our homes and putting those restrictions on developers, because often townhouses and multiplexes are some of the most important housing we need through infill and building inwards in our communities. We need those typical strata developments that are important for a lot of small families and younger families in our communities. So we can't have that financial barrier there. We can't have an insurance system that works that way. So we definitely need to work together and bring that task force to place right away. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, that concludes the random question portion of this forum. We will be moving into closing statements. Just for everyone's benefit, all candidates will be given 5 minutes each to provide closing remarks. Rebuttal cards are all used up and they cannot be used in this portion anyways. All candidates will be asked not to interrupt during closing statements. Candidates have been selected randomly in advance of the forum and will present in the following order. We will begin with Chris Istash, then Doug Patterson, then Doug Rowley. So to begin, Chris Istash, Green Party.
Thank you, Jenna. And thank you to yourself, to Tammy and Mark and the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board for this opportunity. I appreciate it. We're in a pandemic. We didn't want to be, we shouldn't be in an election right now. The NDP called an election to gain more power. They want their majority so that they don't have to be held to the balance of responsibility. They've decided to, put our communities at risk and put a pause on everything we're doing without government running. I'm not a career politician. I've just been working a long time to make my community a better place. By no means a career politician. I'm here because my business closed for 2 months and my family and my wife were terrified, and so were my fellow business owners. I'm here because I saw the tears in the eyes of the youth at the Wet'suwet'en rally at the legislature. I'm here because during the COVID crisis and when my business wasn't working, I helped set up the COVID shelter for the homeless in Chemainus, and I worked side by side with a homeless man and helped him through that. And him and I worked together only to have him die 2 days later at that shelter. I'm here because of the blockades right now at the Ferry Creek and seeing that, no, the NDP hasn't addressed the old growth issues and the sovereignty of land and unceded territories and how we're going against things. I'm here because of the youth I was mentoring with and helping building trails, to only find out this week one of those youth died on the street. We have to stop this. This is why I'm here. I'm not here to be a politician. I'm not here for myself. I'm here for everybody out there. I want people to know that when we're elected, we're here for them first. We're here to listen to their concerns, whoever they vote for. I don't even know. Yeah, this is just a struggle I'm going through. The dealing that we're going through this, and I want to put myself there for people to listen to them. The Friday before the election was called, as I touched on earlier, Sonia showed her support that the BC Greens were there to work with the NDP to get us through this and for a stable government until next year. 3 days later, we were sent to the polls. I don't have illusions of the Green Party forming a majority or having a huge turnout. We still want that handful of accountable, passionate Greens that are full of empathy and compassion, so that we have a minority government that really has that balanced approach and listens to everybody and doesn't just stick to a narrow agenda. We're not just in this health crisis as well. We're in a climate crisis. I sat in Chemainus looking across. I couldn't even see Thetis and Penelica and Salt Spring through the smoke. We cannot keep pushing forward with billion-dollar subsidies in the light of this. I firmly believe that we should not be giving support to these industries and that we're only destroying the atmosphere, the climate, and the land we live on and affecting our future generation. And we're doing this for short-term profits, benefiting multinationals, to not looking forward to the future. On average, renewable infrastructure creates 3 times many jobs. This is where we need to be putting our COVID recovery money. We need new jobs in a renewable future, in a stronger future, in a healthy future. The BC Greens are the only party that's taking this serious. We care about the climate, we care about environmental action, but we care about our residents. I've said before, if you're pro-fracking, pro-LNG, pro-climate change, pro-clear cutting, then I suggest that you have to decide voting between Duck or Doug on not caring about the environment. They clearly haven't stood forward to that. Because we haven't seen any meaningful action from them on it. There's lots of talk, there's lots of policies, there's lots of listening. But again, every community has declared climate emergencies. But we need to help all those communities calling for the support, and all the rallies and all the protests and all the call out for everything. 100,000 youth last year stood in Vancouver downtown. 100,000. This may be a Monday, but Fridays for the future are key, and we need to listen now. I need you to really think about this. I need you to vote for the Green Party, vote Green, and think about the future, and be accountable.
Thank you, Chris. Next, we'll move to closing statements. Doug Patterson, Liberal Party.
Thank you, Jenna. Just earlier on, Doug said that he wasn't sure where I got my figures from. So I have this: based on BC Housing's own documents, only 1 in 5 of the units announced by the NDP are actually open, and most of those units are modular housing units. Source: BC Housing Affordable Housing Investment Plan. So that's where some of those come from. And just a bit of a Freudian slip, but Chris did mention earlier in one of the his responses to a question, the other NDP candidate. So I think, folks, if you're looking green, just think back what he said, the other NDP candidate. That kind of puts them both in the same category. But this like Chris said, this election is totally unnecessary. Sonia had met with Mr. Horgan Friday. We can work with you. Everything's fine. He told her everything's beautiful. And then Monday, he stabs them in the back. What this also does is the NDP is working with the elderly. Well, they've just scared the hell out of the elderly because they're so concerned about having to go to the polls and with the pandemic going on. So this isn't about the people of BC. This is about the NDP government desiring, demanding that they take over Victoria and rule any way they want to. So that has to be stopped. My community involvement speaks to me. I have not done anything by myself. I've had the opportunity of working with various councils, lots of different community organizations, and together we have made some really neat things happen in Ladysmith and the surrounding area, including I've worked with Kinsman on projects over in Stamanis with the Stamanis community. And so as an individual, I'm not going to be able to do very much. I will carry the voice of the Nanaimo North Cowichan riding to Victoria. But as a member of a party that's elected in Victoria, we can do a whole pile together. We can make BC prosper again. So just, I've got 2.5 minutes. I'm just going to go over what the BC Liberals have said that they will do in the first 60 days. Implement a new economic response plan to create new jobs and investment and put more money back in the pockets of taxpayers by eliminating the PST for a year, and a comprehensive review of regulatory processes to ensure more timely approvals. Appoint an independent fair tax commission comprised of nonpartisan economic experts to review all provincial taxes and to recommend which should be adjusted, reduced, or eliminated to most effectively fuel economic recovery. That's not going into the 23 taxes that the NDP government have just implemented since they've been in power. Prepare legislation to strengthen BC's fixed election date so nobody will be able to do this again, not even the Premier on their own whim. Improve students' and teachers' health and safety by implementing a province-wide framework for hybrid and online learning options, promoting distance learning programs, and restoring the $12 million cut from the NDP for the independent distributed learning programs. Launch and ensure a truly independent review of the response to COVID-19 in our seniors' long-term care and assisted living. Initiate planning and changes to implement a provincial prescription drug monitoring program to prevent addiction with early referrals to specialist care and treatment options. Build a strong, positive relationship with the federal government like the one that brought us the Canada Line. Commit to a comprehensive fiscal plan to be tabled in 2021 and passed as part of Budget 2022 to get BC back on track to balance the budget once the pandemic is over and the economy is on solid footing. So folks, if you want strong, fiscal, environmentally positive, economically positive government in Victoria, BC Liberals are the choice that you should be making. And I would be very, very proud to be the representative from Nanaimo North Cowichan. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Closing statements will now move to Doug Routley, NDP.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity. Thanks to VIREB and the Chamber. Thanks to Jenna for hosting this, moderating. It's been very good, a very good discussion, I think, and I appreciate it deeply. Our original promise to people 3.5 years ago was that we would lower your costs of living, and we gave the single largest middle class tax break in the history of the province when we took away the MSP premium. Yes, we added a tax called the employer's health tax. Every province has one. Ours happens to be the lowest rate in the country. We feel that we have made these commitments and we've followed through. We've built the housing. 790 units in this riding are constructed or under construction, 316 approved and in planning or permitting. So that's where we stand on that issue. With COVID, it has changed our entire lives, every one of us. And we will still be in a pandemic a year from now. A year from now, an election would be a pandemic election. But what we need to do is act quickly with the certainty that British Columbians know that the plan that they're being offered will be followed through on. In fact, the Green Party blocked a number of legislative measures and take even for this response to COVID. The government we felt was not stable, and we did not have the mandate that we needed in order to address these vexing and huge foundational problems that face us all right now. There has never been a time in this province when there has been a greater call to action on the part of government to respond and to hear and to be able to manage a crisis. It's been an entire generation since we faced anything remotely like this. And we have to be together in this. We have to know, as we are a government, that the steps we're taking have been endorsed by the people we serve, and that everyone is on board and pulling on the rope the same way. Once we get through this election, these politics are behind us, and we can get on with the task in front of us. That's what I'm asking you to do to support our project, the project we're engaged in as a province, all of us. We need to continue to work together and have the certainty that our plans will be realized. Just in Ladysmith alone, we've created 72 childcare spaces. We provided $150,000 for the Stocking Lake dam design study for flood mitigation affecting Ladysmith residents. We've opened the shelter. We're continuing to support that as a COVID shelter. We contributed money so that the community could engage in a poverty reduction planning process. And we provided $150,000 for a housing needs study, which helps position the community to qualify for government housing programs and projects. These are very important things locally, but in the bigger sense, even during a pandemic, we created over 2,000 childcare spaces. We managed the crisis with the Wet'suwet'en, not by interfering or choosing sides, but by respecting their processes and being ready to support the outcome. That's what UNDRIP means. We've introduced the Human Rights Commissioner, the only independent human rights commissioner in the country. We had done that in the 90s. It was removed by the BC Liberal government. We've made huge investments in healthcare regionally in this area. We're increasing home care support for seniors so that they can stay in their homes longer. We're increasing the hospital at home program. We're opening the second nurse practitioner-led clinic in the province in Nanaimo. And we're developing assertive community action teams that will provide mental health supports 24/7 to relieve some of the pressure on the police in our communities. Now, I kind of rushed through that because I want to end this by thanking everyone for the honor and privilege of having served these communities over these years. 3 terms in government or in opposition. We ran around and we heard from people what the problems were. We offered solutions and promised we'd follow through. I believe we have. We're seeking your support to do more of that. But I want to thank you. Whether I run again in the future or not, whether I'm successful now, this could be the last time I do a meeting like this. And every time I do, I think of what an incredible privilege and honor it has been to serve you and your families in Victoria. And for that, I'm deeply grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, that concludes the forum portion of the morning. We're in morning. I would just like to individually thank all the candidates: Doug Routley, NDP, Doug Patterson, Liberal Party, Chris Istash, Green Party. Okay, thanks everyone. I'll toss it over to Tammy.
Thanks, everybody. I'd also like to thank our three candidates for what's turned out to be a very lively, very informative discussion for this, our first virtual presentation. I'd also like to thank you again, Jenna, for taking the time to be our moderator. You did a wonderful job, given that we were in fresh territory and didn't really know what we were doing until it happened. Thanks to the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board again for helping sponsor this event. And just a quick word to people that have been will be watching this when it's posted or online. We hope this has provided you with some information and was informative and helpful in making your decision. And please, please take advantage of the various ways there are to vote and get out and vote. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.